Hates Superman, rich, bold most of the time. Aside from those key attributes, what really makes Lex Luthor the character he is? There have been a lot of different takes over 85 years. Here's what to know about all of them before seeing Superman. Nicholas Hoult is taking on the role of Lex Luthor in the 2025 Superman movie, and the actor has remained pretty tight-lipped about his portrayal. But he has stated in interviews that the version of Lex in director James Gunn's script isn't like other screen portrayals.
This version of Lex is really fun and different.
That said, Hoult has also stated that his version of Lex is grounded in the character's extensive, and we do mean extensive, comic book history.
I was just trying to be truthful to what I felt connected from the comics and those source materials to this script and this story.
In fact, Hoult said there was one comics miniseries in particular that was especially influential on his performance, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Superman's arch-nemesis debuted in Action Comics issue 23 in 1940 without a first name, but with hair. The hair will come and go a lot, so take notes. The first evil plot of the anonymous Luthor involves sabotaging peace negotiations between two fictional European countries. He hopes to weaken the governments of various nations so that he can step in and take control. Superman beats up all his henchmen and crashes his airship, foiling his plan. In his second appearance in Superman issue 4, it's established that Luthor is a mad scientist who attempts to use all manner of weaponry to harm Superman. It all fails. Luthor continued to pop up with plots to kill Superman. In one, he tries to use an artifact called the Power Stone to give himself Superman-like strength. The big issue with his plan is that he sends Superman himself to retrieve the stone, and Supes does not give him the real thing. Luthor is bold in that story, but it's not due to any great narrative reason. It's because of an art mistake. An artist on a Superman comic strip apparently confused Luthor with another bold villain, the Ultra-Humanite, and drew him as bold. It stuck. The golden age of comics came to an end in the late 1950s, and the 1961 story The Flash of Two Worlds established that those early versions of all of DC's superheroes lived in a whole different universe. So, the original Luthor, who essentially hated Superman just because he always messed up his plans, went off to Earth 2, while the new Luthor with a different backstory lived in the main DC universe, Earth 1. And if you think that's confusing, just hang on. The Earth 1 Luthor does have a first name, Alexis, which he shortens to Lex. He actually grows up with Superboy, the young Clark Kent, in Smallville. Young Lex is a Superboy superfan who begs his traveling salesman father to move the family to Smallville so he can meet him and become his friend. Very normal. Things go badly almost immediately. When Lex accidentally causes a fire in his lab, Superboy blows it out. In the process, Superboy knocks over a bottle of acid, and the fumes make the teenage Lex totally, permanently bald. That's all it takes. Lex vows revenge on Superboy and enacts multiple plots to kill him. Lex destroys his reputation in the process and makes many trips to juvenile hall or boarding school. It gets so bad that his parents kick Lex out and change their last name to Thorol, giving the name to Lex's younger sister, Lena, too. Imagine screwing up so bad your parents move away and change their names. You might become a supervillain too. Lex and Superman both grow up and move to Metropolis. Lex's first plot there involves stealing money via wire fraud, and Superman catches him. This time, Lex is sent to actual prison, giving him an even harder edge. He challenges Superman to a one-on-one fight. He steals Superman's expended power to build a suit of armor with which to challenge him. He makes himself a Kryptonite man. He tricks Superman into the path of a duplicator ray, thus creating another longtime villain, Bizarro.
Me am Superman?
Yes, of course you are.
We could describe plenty more similar stories, but the clear main character trait of Silver Age Lex is hatred of Superman. He does, however, have a soft spot in his heart for his sister Lena, who doesn't even know she's related to him. Lex even briefly sides with Superman and Supergirl against a group of Kryptonian criminals at one point because Lena is caught in the crossfire. Considering that they're the arch-nemeses of Superman and Batman retrospectively, it isn't a huge surprise that Luthor and the Joker have joined forces a few times, even though it doesn't really seem like they have much in common outside of work. They first team up in World's Finest issue 88 from 1957, where they jointly open a manufacturing company to make humanoid robots. They try to trick Batman and Superman into thinking two of the robots are, in fact, them, but the two heroes figure it out and capture them. The two team up again in World's Finest issue 129, attempting to use a molecular rearranger to dispose of Superman long enough to steal some precious gems. It doesn't work. In yet another story in Joker issue 7, the two swap personalities. The Silver Age was a weird time. For more proof of how wacky it was, look no further than Superman issue 147, where Lex from prison contacts the 30th Century Legion of Supervillains and brings them to the 20th century, where he sicks them on Superman. The Legion of Superheroes from the same future time have to step in to save him. Silver Age Lex also had plenty of team-ups with another of Superman's top bad guys, Brainiac. In one, they work together to try to kill Superman, but Luthor won't allow Brainiac to steal from the planet Lexor, which has a society that reveres Lex. The prototypical Lex Luthor look is probably a well-tailored suit or a prison uniform, but a third iconic look debuted in Superman issue 282 from 1974. If you've ever watched an episode of Super Friends, you've seen a version of it as the animated Lex leads the Legion of Doom.
From now on, we'll be known as the Legion of Doom!
He calls the purple and green getup his battle array, which has rocket boots so he can fly and a cadre of high-tech weapons he can use against Superman. It's as goofy as it sounds, but it's a memorable look. Luthor's battle array has come back in different forms over the years, mostly for nostalgic reasons. It's clear that the original purpose of the costume was to give Lex a distinctive appearance so DC could make toys that weren't just a bold, middle-aged man in a business suit. While Lex was rocking his battle array in cartoons, the 1978 Superman movie was keeping him true to his roots and suits. Gene Hackman played Lex in the film, and despite having a first name, he's considerably more like the Golden Age version than what was in the comics at the time. He didn't grow up with Superman, has hair at first, and hopes to enact a plot to bomb the San Andreas Fault to create new beachfront property. As usual, Superman stops him. When he brings him to jail at the end, Lex reveals that he didn't actually have hair all along.
Lex Luthor, the greatest criminal mind of our time!
The movie also introduces two lackeys for Lex, the bumbling Otis and his girlfriend, Eve Tessmacher. Versions of both will be in the 2025 film. Hackman's Lex returned in 1980's Superman 2, where he strikes an alliance with General Zod and his other Kryptonian criminals to take down Superman, but ends up getting the raw end of that deal. He sat out Superman 3 but came back for 1987's Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, where he creates a clone of Superman, Nuclear Man. Comics Lex would continue to wear his battle array into the 1980s. In the DC Comics Presents Annual from 1982, it helps to differentiate him from the returning Golden Age Luthor, who's given the first name Alexei. The two Luthors come up with a plan to switch universes and take down their respective Supermen. They make the mistake, though, of setting up a lair on Earth 3. That world's Lex is a superhero, and he helps the Earth 1 and Earth 2 Supermen take down his evil counterparts. Earth 1 Lex gets a further and even more toyetic upgrade in 1983's Action Comics issue 544, where he starts wearing a war suit that is, of course, still purple and green. The story finds Lex finally getting sick of constantly losing to Superman, so he hops on a spaceship and leaves Earth. He travels to Lexor, where he lives a life of peace for a time, but he can't get over his obsession with Superman. So he upgrades an ancient armored war suit. He and Superman fight, and Lex accidentally destroys Lexor in the process, making his hatred for Supes even stronger. All those Earths get pared down to just one single DC Comics universe in the 1985 series, Crisis on Infinite Earths. Ever the opportunist, Lex sees the chaos of the series' antagonist, the Anti-Monitor. The Anti-Monitor destroying universes as a chance to take control of what's left. So he and Brainiac assemble an army of supervillains to join them in their quest. To prove how serious he is, Earth 1 Lex even kills Earth 2 Lex in front of them all. During the inevitable battle between the villains and the heroes, the Spectre steps in to put a stop to it. He convinces them instead to work together to stop the Anti-Monitor. The villain army is sent back in time to prevent the creation of the Anti-Monitor's technology, but infighting causes them to fail. The multiverse is shattered and reformed into a single universe with just one Earth. It also leaves just one Lex, who finds himself in a prison cell with no memory of the crisis. Crisis on Infinite Earths was a big reset button for DC Comics, to the point where the Lex who appeared in the prison cell near the end of the series wasn't even the version who showed up in the Superman comics that followed. The Man of Steel miniseries from 1986 introduces Alexander Luthor, a millionaire industrialist who is balding but is still clinging onto some red hair. His company, Lex Corp, essentially runs the city of Metropolis. Superman's arrival in the city quickly upends the balance of power though. Superman reveals that Lex knows about a terrorist attack on his own yacht in advance, and he's arrested. It's no secret that the post-crisis Lex is at least partially based on Donald Trump. The 1989 one-shot Lex Luthor, the unauthorized biography, has exactly the same cover design as Trump's book, The Art of the Deal. This Lex has been married 8 times, and has plans to make Lois Lane his 9th wife. Unlike the Silver Age Lex, he was not childhood friends with Clark Kent, but he did know Daily Planet editor Perry White as a kid. His issues with Superman no longer stem from a personal beef, but a notion that it's unfair that Superman got all this power from birth. Well, Lex had to work his way up to where he is.
They need to see the fraud you are.
With the launch of a new Superman title in 1987, a vengeful and once again totally bald Lex gets his hands on the only kryptonite on Earth, fashioning a ring out of it. It prevents Superman from ever getting close to him, but it also has some unintended side effects for Lex himself. Action Comics issue 600 reveals that the radiation from the ring has given Lex kryptonite poisoning, and he has to lose his right hand. But that's not the end of it though. Lex later learns that it wasn't just poisoning, the ring gave him cancer that has metastasized. It's terminal, and here's where the story goes from pretty serious to comic book insanity. Lex fakes his death in a plane crash so that he can transplant his brain into a clone of himself who has a full head of red hair, a beard, and an Australian accent. The new Lex claims to be his own son. Unfortunately for him, the clone body starts rapidly aging and starts to break down. He's only saved when the demon Neron offers to restore his health in exchange for his soul. Luthor accepts and gets his youth back, without hair. The post-crisis Lex has 2 children, so to speak. His daughter has the same name as the Silver Age Lex's sister, Lena. After his 8th wife, the Contessa Erica Alexander del Portenza gives birth to Lena. Lex has a Contessa drugged into submission. He wants to raise Lena all by himself, but the Contessa escapes and has Lena kidnapped, leading Lex to confide in Superman after he rescues her that Lena is all he truly cares about. Yet that doesn't last very long. Lena gets caught up in a conflict between the current Brainiac and a future version, Brainiac 13. To save his own being, Brainiac downloads his mind into Lena, but Lex makes a deal with Brainiac 13 to hand over the other Brainiac's vessel, Lena, so he can take credit for not only saving Metropolis but advancing it with future technology. An aged-up Lena, still inhabited by Brainiac, made a few more appearances. Lex's son, as it were, is the post-crisis Superboy, who first emerges as a potential Superman replacement in the Death of Superman storyline. It's revealed very early that Superboy is a genetic construct created by Project Cadmus with half of Superman's DNA. But when Superboy eventually joins the Teen Titans, it's revealed that the other half of his DNA comes from none other than Luthor. The 1990s and 2000s were a big time for Superman TV shows, and every series had a pretty wildly different version of Lex. Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, debuted in 1993, and its take on Lex fit the more romance-focused tone of the show. While still a businessman and criminal, John Shea's curly-haired Lex is also a romantic rival of Superman, hoping to steal away Lois Lane's affections. The Lex of Superman the Animated Series, which premiered in 1996, is very much in the mold of the post-crisis take on the character. The Clancy Brown-voiced Lex is a powerful, egomaniacal, and bold business tycoon who hates Superman for his innate abilities.
My biotech people will spend years studying your carcass. I'm certain it will be a most profitable endeavor.
That series also introduces Lex's bodyguard and right-hand woman, Mercy Graves, who would go on to appear in the comics. Brown would continue to voice Lex in multiple other animated projects over the years. Smallville made the Superman story into a teen drama in 2001, so that version of Lex, played by Michael Rosenbaum, spends more time in the title town, becoming friends with Clark Kent. He doesn't grow up there though, instead coming to Smallville as a child and getting caught in a meteor shower, losing all of his hair. As a young adult, Lex is sent back to Smallville by his father, Lionel Luthor, to run a local subdivision of Luthor Corp. He becomes more vengeful over time, killing his father and becoming Superman's archenemy. More recently, John Cryer played Lex in the Arrowverse shows. and Michael Cudlitz portrayed a bearded version on Superman and Lois. It could absolutely be a fake-out, but one of the trailers for the 2025 Superman movie heavily implies that Lex Luthor may be the President of the United States.
Did you consult with the President?
If he indeed is, then that would harken back to the Lex 2000 story from the comics, where Luthor runs for president on a technological progress platform and wins. The presidency immediately gets Lex access to top-secret documents that reveals Clark Kent is, in fact, Superman. But that info gets erased from his memory in a later story because it's comics, and that always happens. Lex's presidency sets him against not just Superman, but Batman, who learns Lex played a major role in Gotham City being cut off from aid after an earthquake. After some successful machinations, including framing Batman for murder, Lex overplays his hand. Superman and Batman corner him in the Oval Office, so Lex uses a combination of Bane's venom, kryptonite, and a new war suit to go on a rampage, revealing his true colors to the world. Lex goes missing and is impeached and indicted. In an interview on the Happy Sad Confused podcast, Nicholas Hoult said there was one comic that he kept coming back to as an inspiration for his take on Lex Luthor.
The one that I found myself picking up again a lot was Luthor Man of Steel.
And that makes sense because that 5-issue 2005 series by Brian Azzarello and Lee Bermejo really aims to get inside Lex's head. Set before the events of Lex 2000, it presents a Luthor who is truly invested in at least giving the appearance of being a philanthropist. But he is also eaten up by his jealousy of Superman. He thinks the man in his name is a lie. Superman is an alien with too much power who has tricked people into admiring him. In an attempt to draw people's adoration away from Superman, Lex creates his own android superhero named Hope. Lex orchestrates a bombing attack at a daycare. Hope, under Lex's control, flies to a great height and drops the apparent bomber, Toyman. Superman saves him, thus leading to a fight between Hope and Superman. Lex makes Hope self-destruct, placing the blame for her death on Superman. Superman then confronts him, leading Lex to vow to destroy public trust in Big Blue however he can. Director James Gunn has made it repeatedly known that his biggest inspiration for his Superman movie is the 2006 All-Star Superman miniseries by Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely. Its take on Lex Luthor couldn't be more different from the Lex Luthor Man of Steel series. It features a Lex who has been sentenced to death for his many crimes against humanity. Yet Superman, who has limited time to live, is convinced he can find the good in his arch-rival. Lex escapes his execution thanks to a serum that gives him Superman-like powers, and he creates a path of destruction through Metropolis. Superman shoots Lex with a gravity gun, thus causing Lex's metabolism to accelerate, eating through his temporary powers quickly. As Lex's powers fade, he begins to at least briefly see the world as Superman does. When Lex snaps out of it, Superman still has to punch him out. The 2003 series Superman Birthright aimed to update Supes' origin story for the 21st century, but in the process it brought back some 1960s flair, once again making Lex a childhood friend of Clark Kent's in Smallville. 2 years later, Infinite Crisis, the events that reintroduced a DC multiverse, tinkered with Lex's origin even more. The event finds Alexander Luthor Jr. from Earth 3 posing as the Prime Earth Lex to manipulate various figures to restore the multiverse. But Prime Earth Lex works behind the scenes to get other villains on his side, and finally allows the Joker to kill Alexander Luthor Jr. Alexander's efforts lead to some changes for Lex. Namely, it makes Lex come from old money, with his ancestors being a long line of industrialists which date back to Metropolis's founding. Though he did have to revive the family fortune after it was lost in the 1929 stock market crash. It also reintroduced his sister, Lena. After nearly 20 years without a Superman movie, Big Blue and Lex came roaring back to theaters with 2006's Superman Returns. The film serves as a direct sequel to Superman 2, ignoring the third and fourth films. As such, Kevin Spacey plays an over-the-top version of Gene Hackman's take on Lex.
But millions of people will die.
Billions! Once again, the press underestimates me.
His plan is even a variation on the one from the first movie. He plans to use kryptonite crystals to create a new continent in the Atlantic Ocean, where he'd own the land. But Superman lifts the landmass out of the ocean and throws it into space. Lex would appear again in a very different form in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice in 2016. Jesse Eisenberg's version of the character is a long-haired tech mogul who manipulates Batman and Superman into fighting each other until they realize that he's the real threat. As a plan B, Lex releases a genetically engineered monster that kills Superman. Lex is sent to prison, where his head is shaved. After Infinite Crisis, post-crisis Lex does a few more things, including becoming an Orange Lantern powered by greed in Blackest Night. But all that got wiped away in 2011, with yet another universe-wide DC reboot, the New 52. This new Lex is a grab bag of previous versions of the character. Grew up in Smallville, has a sister named Lena, has an obsession with Kryptonite, is an accomplished scientist, and is a successful businessman. He also has a daughter named Lena, who becomes tied to Brainiac. He creates Bizarro, and he participates in the creation of Superboy with Project Cadmus. The big difference this time, though, is that this Lex tries to be a superhero when he first arrives in Metropolis. Upon hearing about a string of missing persons cases, Lex dons a costume and goes after the perpetrators, Farm and Graft. Upon seeing that they're working with Kryptonite, though, Lex strikes a deal with them. Lex ends up not only betraying them, but also his mother, who had started LexCorp. The New 52 Lex also gets his war suit pretty quickly, all things considered. After buying 38 different companies to build it, Lex dons the suit in the Forever Evil event from 2013. Lex doesn't much like the alternate universe crime syndicate taking over his Earth, so he bands together his own Injustice League to take them down and save the Justice League from their imprisonment. In the aftermath, the Injustice League and Lex in particular are hailed as heroes. After some persistent persuasion, Lex even eventually lands a spot on the Justice League. Among his adventures with the League is stopping the Amazo virus, which LexCorp invented. Whoops! He also helped take down Darkseid, absorbing a big chunk of his energy. Lex then decided to quit the League and stay on the planet Apocalypse as its new leader. Lex gets bored with being a space king and comes back to Earth at just about the time the New 52 Superman is revealed to be dead. Thinking there was no replacement, Lex puts on a costume of his own design and declares himself the new Superman. He doesn't realize that the pre-New 52 Superman has come to the universe until he appears, first to fight, but eventually to assist Luthor in his heroic efforts. They work together for a while, but disagreements lead to Lex destroying his S symbol and becoming an independent hero for a while. The inevitable heel turn eventually comes in 2018's Justice League No Justice, where Lex realizes that he's an agent of entropy, not order. So he goes and forms a new Legion of Doom to fight against the Justice League. The goddess Perpetua offers the once again evil Lex a chance at far greater power, and he takes it, fusing with Martian Manhunter to become Apex Lex. He goes on to find versions of himself from throughout the multiverse to recruit into an army. Perpetua, who wants to reshape the multiverse in her own image, wants Lex to take down the Batman Who Laughs, whom she sees as a threat to her plans. Lex attempts to do so, but realizes his powers are useless against the Batman Who Laughs. Yet he manages to bring the Batman Who Laughs back to Perpetua. The Batman Who Laughs then convinces Perpetua that she doesn't need Lex anymore, and should instead work with him. Convinced, Perpetua casts Lex back to Earth, powerless. He more or less goes back to being the old Lex again. Among the villainous acts Lex carries out back on Earth is killing his former employee Manchester Black, for which he's sent to prison. In what seems like a never-ending cycle of going from villain to hero and back for the post-New 52 Lex, the imprisoned Luthor uses nanotechnology to turn LexCorp into Supercorp, offering all the resources and manpower of his company to Superman to help protect Metropolis. While Superman has a very hard time trusting Lex's intent, Lex's motives indeed seem to be genuine. He helps Superman take down longtime villains Parasite and Brainiac, and they also work together against Lex's old enemies, Farm and Graft. A temporarily free Lex even helps defeat a revived Doomsday. What ought to be pretty clear by this point is that not only has Lex Luthor played a lot of different roles in Superman stories over the past 85 years, but there have been multiple different Lexes in lots of different universes. So, what will the version that James Gunn and Nicholas Hoult bring to life look like? Well, just based on the trailers, it seems that we can probably rule out the more heroic takes on Lex. All indications point to him being a full-on bad guy. But Holt's particular affection for Lex Luthor Man of Steel does seem to indicate he's not likely to be a Lex who openly starts a group called Legion of Doom or Injustice League. At the very least, he thinks he's doing the right thing by opposing Superman, Gunn explained.
I think he sees him as a threat to his livelihood and his legacy.
We'll see exactly how it all plays out when Superman hits theaters July 11th.